threw on the parka this morning and the gloves and everything. Welcome to meeting number 3 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of November 25th, 2021. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. So you are aware, the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. Given the ongoing pandemic situation and in light of the recommendations from health authorities, as well as the directive of the Board of Internal Economy on October 19th, 2021, to remain healthy and safe, all those attending the meeting in person are to maintain 2-meter physical distancing, must wear a non-medical mask when circulating in the room, and it is highly recommended that the mask be worn at all times, including when seated. Must maintain proper hand hygiene by using the provided hand sanitizer at the room entrance. As the chair, I will be enforcing these measures for the duration of the meeting, and I thank members in advance for their cooperation. To ensure an orderly meeting, I would like to outline a few rules to follow. Members and witnesses participating virtually may speak in the official language of your choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English, or French. If interpretation is lost, please inform me immediately, and we will ensure interpretation is properly restored before resuming the proceedings. For members participating in person, proceed as you usually would when the whole committee is meeting in person in a committee room. Keep in mind the Board of Internal Economy's guidelines for mask use and health protocols. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. If you are on the video conference, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself. Those in the room, your microphone will be controlled as normal by the Proceedings and Verification Officer. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. A reminder that all comments by members should be addressed through the chair. With regard to a speaking list, the committee clerk will advise the chair on whose hands are up in the best of his ability, and we'll do the best we can to maintain consolidated order of speaking for all members, whether they are participating virtually or in person. Pursuant to the order adopted by the House of Commons on Tuesday, December 7th, 2021, the committee is commencing its study of gun control, illegal arms trafficking, and the increase in gun crimes committed by members of street gangs. With us today by video conference, the Honorable Marco Mendicino, Minister of Public Safety, from Canada Border Services Agency, John Lasowski, President, from the Department of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, Rob Stewart, Deputy Minister, and from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Brenda Lucki, Commissioner. We will start with opening remarks, after which we will proceed with rounds of questions. Welcome, Minister. It's very good to see you. However, virtually, I now invite you to make an opening statement. To the Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, committee members. As we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm joining you virtually from the traditional territory of the Algonquin. It's an honor to make this first appearance before you in my new capacity as the Minister for Public Safety. I look forward to collaborating with you. Je vous remercie, Madame Michaud, d'avoir présenté la motion à la Chambre pour étudier la violence armée. On a vu trop de tragédies à Montréal, à Winnipeg, à Vancouver, à Toronto, à travers le pays. Il y a eu trop de vies perdues. École Polytechnique in Montreal, Quebec City Mosque, Toronto, on the Danforth, and Portapique in Nova Scotia. Each of these tragedies was marked by senseless acts of violence with one common denominator: guns. We can say we grieve for the victims and survivors, and surely our hearts go out to them. But words are not enough. Thoughts and prayers are not enough. Words have to be put into action, and that is what we are doing. Our government has taken decisive action by introducing stronger gun controls, investing in more policing resources and border enforcement, and by allocating funds for prevention strategies and community infrastructure. We passed Bill C-71, which requires enhanced background checks to prevent those who have a history of violence from owning a firearm. Regulations under Bill C-71 have been referred to this committee. Once in force, they will help police trace illegal guns and ensure that firearms licenses are verified. At a time when we have seen rates of gun-related gender-based violence and femicide increase, we owe it to survivors to do more. I urge members to deal with these regulations at the first available opportunity. Canadians will also recall that our government introduced a ban of over 1,500 assault-style rifles, including the weapons used at École Polytechnique, at the Quebec City Mosque, and at Dawson College. For decades, grieving families and survivors had asked successive governments to prohibit these types of firearms. As my predecessor, Minister Blair, said at the time, enough is enough. In addition to stronger gun controls, we've backed up law enforcement in our communities and at the border. We've invested over $300 million over 5 years beginning this year, including $40 million to combat smuggling, $15 million for tracing, over $21 million for CBSA equipment and intelligence sharing. We've allocated $250 million to fight guns and gangs violence on our streets. The results of these investments are clear. They are working. We've seen record gun seizures and arrests, thanks to the hardworking members of the RCMP and the CBSA.
In Quebec, our investments have allowed us to hire many new law enforcement officers. This is added to the specialists that were hired throughout the country in the last year.
Continuing to work very closely with our provincial and American partners. Domestically, we have the Integrated Border Enforcement Team, which coordinates the RCMP and provincial police services through joint operations. And when I was in Washington, D.C. about a month ago, I met with my counterpart, Secretary Mayorkas. We committed to attending the Cross-Border Crime Forum, as well as Joint Firearms Task Force, to stem the flow of illegal guns across our international borders. Despite this progress, we have more to do. Now that we have banned assault rifles, we have to take the next steps and implement a buyback program. To all the survivors and advocacy groups, including Police Se Souviennent and the Danforth families, we are listening to you. We are going to make the buyback program mandatory.
When it comes to handguns, I hear my colleagues. I'm aware of motions that were adopted by the National Assembly in Quebec.
Majority of gun-related homicides involve a handgun. And that's why our government is committed to investing $1 billion to support those provinces and territories who want to ban handguns. We are going to increase criminal penalties for gun smuggling and trafficking and to enhance the capacity of police and border officials to keep illegal firearms and ammunition out of the country. But we cannot simply rely on the hammer of the criminal law. Arresting, charging, prosecuting, and sentencing are all after the fact. We need to prevent gun crimes from occurring in the first place. And that's why we're investing $250 million in a Safe Communities Fund to create safer and more inclusive spaces. And speaking of safety, I say to our law-abiding gun owners, we know that you are responsible, prudent, and respectful of the law. I want to assure hunters, farmers, and target shooters that nothing we are doing is intended to diminish your lawful recreational activities. At the same time, we have a responsibility to work together to reduce gun violence. We cannot risk another shooting at a school, a place of worship, or at a police officer, or on women, or on any innocent life. Public safety is our top priority. Protecting human life must come above all else. And Mr. Chair, and to the members of the committee, I am committed to working with all of you to achieve that goal. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you very much, Minister. I will now open the floor for questions. And let me begin by inviting Ms. Dancho. 6 minutes, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to thank the Minister for being with us today on relatively short notice. And Minister, I'd like to talk a little bit about, I've lived in Montreal for a number of years. It's deeply important to me that we see the issue of gun violence solved in that country, but we also see violent crime across Canada. I represent a riding in Winnipeg, and we're seeing increased violence there as well. In fact, violent crime across Canada, 5 of the last 6 years has gone up. Firearms-related offenses have increased for 6 years in a row now. Homicides are at a 30-year high, and we know at least 1/3 of homicides are committed with firearms. And so as long as I've been alive, homicides haven't been this bad. I think that's pretty serious, and we're hoping for serious action from your government. And Winnipeg itself is on track to surpass its 2019 homicide record, and it's also ranked the violent capital of Canada in 2020. So Conservative members are taking the violent crime we're seeing surging across the country over the last 6 years very seriously. But we are also disappointed that following one of the shootings this fall in Montreal, I think it was even the day after, your government introduced Bill C-5, which removes mandatory prison time, as you know, for robberies with a firearm, extortion with a firearm, weapons trafficking, discharging a firearm with intent to injure, and using a firearm in the commission of a crime. And so we're quite concerned that on one hand, we're seeing criminals using often illegally smuggled guns to harm our communities. And on the other hand, your government is taking away the ability to ensure they have mandatory prison time. I'd like to know, Minister, if you believe Bill C-5 will keep criminals responsible for the shootings in Montreal and others across the country off our streets.
I do, Ms. Dancho, and before I tell you why, I want to thank you for your advocacy and for bringing your experiences both in Winnipeg and Montreal to this committee. I will say that Bill C-5 does ensure that a number of mandatory minimum penalties with regards to firearms offenses, serious firearms offenses, do remain in place. And not only that, as I have said, there are a number of serious firearms offenses to which we propose to increase maximum penalties, which of course we trust our independent judiciary to dispense where appropriate. I will also say, Ms. Dancho, that as I outlined in my remarks, our government takes this issue very seriously, which is why we have introduced additional gun controls, particularly the banning of assault rifles. And we are now going to take the next steps to do whatever it takes to reduce gun violence, because I believe we are all joined in that cause.
We don't share your belief that allowing criminals who use firearms in robberies for extortion and serious gun crimes like that, we believe that they should go to jail, and that would help clean up our streets. We are concerned that Bill C-5 is allowing these criminals to return to our streets and ensure violence continues. Another issue we know is deeply tied to gun violence in Montreal and Toronto is, of course, drug trafficking, pushing of opioids, fentanyl, heroin. We know opioids kill 7,000 Canadians a year, and yet this Bill C-5 also reduces or eliminates the mandatory prison time for drug traffickers. And so we're quite concerned that we know gang violence, gun violence is deeply interrelated with drug trafficking. And yet on one hand, you're taking away the ability for mandatory prison time for those who commit dangerous, violent gun crime and those who are pushing drugs on people that are killing 7,000 Canadians a year. So again, we see Bill C-5 completely opposite of what needs to be done to address the gun violence and the gang and drug trafficking activity that is fueling that in our cities. And again, in Manitoba alone, we have 372 drug-related deaths in 2020. So we find this to be very serious. Does the minister believe that leaving criminal drug traffickers on our streets rather than putting them in prison where they rightfully belong for killing thousands of Canadians will stop gang violence in Montreal?
Of course not, Ms. Dancho, and having served over a decade on the front lines of our criminal justice system and as a federal prosecutor responsible for prosecuting drug traffickers and not those who are suffering from mental health and other issues, I agree that where appropriate, there do need to be jail sentences, and we must trust our courts and our judges to dispense with justice where appropriate. I will also say with regards to the opioid crisis that our government has put in place measures to stop organized crime and to stop criminals from trafficking in opioids, including at our border. And as I mentioned, I had met with my counterpart, Secretary Mayorkas of DHS in Washington, where we agreed to meet to use the cross-border fine form to interdict the trafficking of illegal drugs, including opioids. And we're seeing CBSA and RCMP make record arrests, which is
yes. Thank you, Minister. You mentioned that in your opening remarks. We just have about a minute left, so I'll just go to my last question. The Minister mentioned a gun buyback program as a primary measure to stop gun violence, although we know gang violence, using guns, and drug trafficking is the primary reason we're seeing rising gun crime in our cities. I mean, how many guns does the Minister believe will be handed over to the federal government from criminals in Montreal using a gun buyback or a provincial ban? How many criminals does he anticipate will hand over their illegally possessed guns to the federal government?
Minister, about 20 seconds left in the slot.
Very briefly, Mr. Chair, I would simply say that the buyback program that we are going to introduce...
Minister, the answer is zero. Criminals will not be handing their guns back to you, and they are the ones that are hurting people in our cities. The number is zero, Minister.
Point of order, Chair.
Point of order. Who's wanting the point of order?
Mr. McKinnon. The witness was asked a question and given a very short time to answer, and it's been interrupted. I request that the minister be given time to properly answer the question without interruption.
Take 10 seconds, Minister. And then
point of order, Mr. Chair. Point of order, Mr. Chair. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but the time is my time, and it could be used how I deem correct. And I was not satisfied with the answer, and we can move forward since my time and his time is up.
You're right. The 6 minutes is up. So we will move to the next questioner, and that would be Ms. Ben-Dayan. You have 6 minutes, and the floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would also like to thank the Minister for being present here today at the committee. I would like to ask questions about C-71, which was adopted in 2019 and was brought up by the Minister. This is an important step forward to have better control of firearms. I was happy to see the first set of rules adopted recently, and then Police se souvient and other stakeholders would like to see these regulations reinforced to have systematic measures, and we want documentation for people who buy firearms, and we want to extend the waiting period to 90 days to keep information on people who are buying firearms. Can the Minister comment on these possible changes and give us an update regarding the rest of the regulations coming from C-71? Answer. Yes, thank you, Mrs. Ben-Dayan. Thank you for your leadership on this issue and for advocating for Police se souvient. I spoke with the leaders of Police se souvient 2 weeks ago. C-71 is an essential legislation for the government. We're in the process of introducing more measures and controls to address firearm violence. There are processes in place to have background checks to make sure that people who would like to buy firearms don't have a criminal or violent criminal background. This way, we can disqualify those who would like to purchase firearms if they have a history of violence or of gendered violence. There are also processes in Bill C-71 that ensure the records of purchasing and selling firearms. So we're now asking that this committee study the regulations in C-71 in order to take the next steps to protect everyone. This bill is so important as part of our strategy to fight against gun violence. Thank you, Mr. Minister. And you mentioned it in your statement also, to have a buyback program for assault weapons that are prohibited from our decree in 2020 is very important. This decree provides a 2-year amnesty for arms holders, and this comes to an end in May 2022. The deadline is soon. Can you tell us how much progress you've made in implementing this very important buyback promise? Answer: absolutely, Mrs. Bendayan. We have delivered on our promise. We have introduced a compulsory buyback program. This is a result of the hard work of Police Se Souvient and the members who are concerned about the violence related to gun violence. So we will take the next steps and introduce this initiative. Again, the goal is to fight gun violence. With regards to amnesty, we will address this important element as part of our future strategy. Thank you. Of course, as I am a Montreal Member of Parliament, I am very concerned about the increase, or rather a wave of armed violence with almost 200 shootings this year in Montreal. We have adopted measures to fight gun violence in our streets by banning many models of assault rifles, but many deaths are caused by handguns these days. My constituents are very clear about this. They want a national ban. Polls are showing that 3/4 of Canadians also support a national ban on handguns. Can you tell us what your point of view is on a national ban of handguns? Answer: I agree with you, Mrs. Bendayan. It's a very difficult time for Montreal, Quebec, and everywhere in Canada. We have seen a rise of gun violence, specifically handguns. This is why, during the election, we promised to work together with the provinces and territories to find solutions, concrete solutions, to reduce the amount of gun violence we're seeing. We are going to invest $1 billion in collaboration with the provinces. I just spoke with my colleague, the Minister Guilbeault in Quebec, and we have made a commitment to discuss this important issue in the future. Thank you.
6 minutes are exactly up. And now I would like to ask Madame Michaud. She has 6 minutes. Madame Michaud, the floor is yours.
Merci, Monsieur. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Minister, for being here with us today. Thank you to the various witnesses that are there. And thank you to the committee members and all parties that have voted in favor of my motion in order to allow us to tackle this important issue quickly. I have many questions for the minister today. We know that in Canada, in general, crime rates related to guns has doubled since 2014. In Quebec and in Montreal, gun crimes have gone up drastically in recent years as well. With regards to crime organizations in Montreal, 90% of the guns that they use are illegal, and the majority are coming from the United States. So I would like to know this, Mr. Minister. I'm concerned when I see that the police services in Montreal has seized more guns than the RCMP over the years. So how can we say that federal agencies are not seizing more weapons? How do you explain this? Is this a lack of resources, or is this a lack of political will to tackle this issue?
Monsieur le ministre.
Pardon, la technologie.
I'm so sorry. It's a technological glitch. Thank you, Madame Michaud. Listen, I share your concerns. It's not because there are fewer arrests and seizures at the federal level. It's not fair to say that. Much to the contrary, the RCMP, in collaboration with other police services, have put in place joint operations to conduct a record number of arrests and firearm seizures. We have to work together with Quebec. That was done. We have to continue conducting these joint operations with police services in Montreal and keep up the good work. We have to adopt measures to keep guns out of criminals' hands and out of the hands of anyone who has criminal intentions. We have invested at the federal level. These federal investments are transferred to the Quebec government, and this is why the government in Quebec has the opportunity to hire more people in the last year, 71 in Quebec. So the federal government is there to invest the necessary resources in tight collaboration with Quebec's government. Thank you, Mr. Minister. You often talk about the investments that were made in the past, and I understand that there's a lot of money that was put on the table, but the results don't seem to be there. There are bans that were put in place, new rules, new laws to ban certain types of firearms, and you mentioned some shootings in your opening remarks, and some of these weapons were legally purchased. This tells us that despite regulations in place, we haven't done enough. We need to do more to control firearms. TVA Nouvelle reported in March 2021 on the arms road in Quebec. This is a subject we don't look at enough. We think about Akwesasne that is in Quebec, Ontario, and the United States. It seems that hundreds of weapons a week are going over the border, and we don't seem to have adequate resources to stop this flow. We proposed to the Bloc. The Bloc has proposed a better collaboration between police services, a joint operation between the police of Akwesasne, the SQ, the NYPD, the OPP. In this way, information could be shared. These teams can work together in the field to end the illegal trafficking of these weapons. Do you think we need to do more? What can we do more to stop the flow of weapons crossing the U.S. border? Answer, I agree that we have to continue. My apologies. We have to continue making more efforts at the border. We have already created cross-border partnerships and interprovincial associations as well. This is the progress we've made. Last year, we had K9 units from the AASFC seized 74 weapons, 42 charters, and 22 prohibited weapons. This year, despite the reduced number of people crossing borders, the SFC has seized 59 guns, 21 chargers, and 12 prohibited weapons. A few weeks ago in Cornwall, the RCMP seized 53 pistols, 104 chargers, and 6 various other weapons. So we are making progress. We have many examples of seizures and arrests, but I agree. We have to continue.
Thank you very much.
Merci.
Thank you.
Now I would ask Mr. McGregor to take his 6-minute slot. Mr. McGregor, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Chair, and welcome Minister Mendicino to our committee. You did just reference the operation that happened in Cornwall, and it did involve the participation of the Ontario Provincial Police, the Mohawk Police Service, Montreal Police, and the Sûreté du Québec. In the previous Parliament, the Public Safety Committee did release a report on systemic racism in policing in Canada, and recommendation 13 of that report did call on the Government of Canada to make sure that we have an Indigenous Police Services framework, and that this, Indigenous Police Services have to be designated as essential. There has to be a requirement that they are adequately resourced. There has to be a commitment of provision of sufficient funding to make sure that all interested Indigenous communities can develop these police services. We know many Indigenous communities straddle the Canada-U.S. border where smuggling takes place. We know many Indigenous communities within Canada suffer from gang violence and from firearms crimes. So my question to you, Minister, I know you're just getting into the role of public safety, but how are you directing your department to take advantage of this recommendation and to make sure that Indigenous communities have the policing resources they need to effectively keep their own communities safe from firearms trafficking and gang recruitment?
Well, first, Mr. McGregor, I want to thank you and other members of the committee that participated in that study, and it is one of the reasons why the work that we are doing collectively at SECU is so important. And I will say that our government is committed to working with Indigenous leaders and communities across the country to ensure that that we are collaborating with them in a way that allows Indigenous leadership to ensure public safety across communities. And I will say that I've already had a number of, I think, very constructive discussions with Commissioner Luckey, who is on this call, and you'll have an opportunity as well to pose questions to her as well. But we are going to make sure that we are investing additional financial resources to co-develop the policies, the regulatory and administrative frameworks that begins with Indigenous perspectives in our communities. And that is work that I know that is extremely important to the RCMP, who work in close tandem with Indigenous leadership. And why is it important? Precisely for the reason that you pointed out at the outset of your question, which is that when we are working together with Indigenous peoples across provincial and territorial governments, we are better able to interdict illegal trafficking of guns and drugs. And we are able to ensure that we are creating safe communities, and that is something that we are committed to doing.
Thank you, Minister. I just want to get through to a few more questions. We know a lot of the gun violence in Canada is the result of drug trafficking. We know a lot of gangs are competing for the same turf, and we know that the drugs being imported to Canada are far more deadly with fentanyl and carfentanil, and they are far more addictive. And as long as we have that demand problem because of the increased toxicity of drugs, but also their addiction qualities, we are going to have the resultant problems as a result. So, you know, in my community in British Columbia, we've been suffering through the opioids epidemic for 6 years now. It has left a trail of carnage in its wake. We now have the province of British Columbia, the city of Vancouver, the city of Toronto, the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police calling on the government of Canada to be bold and to implement decriminalization. Because we know as long as there's a stigma of ongoing criminality, people are not going to be comfortable getting the help that they need. And so as long as if we're not treating that root cause of the problem, Minister, we're going to still keep on seeing symptoms such as gun violence and gang activity. Why, Minister, is your government only implementing half measures? Why are you not going the full way, meeting the requests of these important jurisdictions and actually implementing decriminalization for small possession amounts?
Well, I would begin by sharing the concern that you have in your community with regards to the opioids crisis. And we are going to continue to listen very carefully to our public health care experts, but equally to work within the law enforcement community to take an approach that is based on reducing harm for those with substance issues, for those with mental health issues, and that's why we have made significant investments. We will listen to the evidence, but with regards to those who would traffic illegally opioids and other drugs to take advantage and to victimize those, we have put in place concrete resources, including at the border, and I highlighted those investments very specifically at the outset of my remarks, so that we can interdict and stop the flow of illegal drug trafficking at our borders. And equally, we will continue to invest in our provincial and municipal frontline law enforcement so that we can stop domestic illegal drug trafficking, which is there to simply take advantage of those who are vulnerable, because it is the right thing to do, because that is how we are going to engender more public safety across the country. And I'm happy to continue to work with you and other members of this committee to achieve that goal.
I think that's my time, Chair. Keep going. I'm going to play by the rules here.
Mr. Chair, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, we had a full 6 minutes. We now move into the second round of questions. And the first questioner will be Ms. Dancho. You have 5 minutes, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make it clear, Minister, that your government has been in power for 6 years. And for 6 years, we've seen violent crime go up. We've seen violent crime with guns go up. We've seen deaths from drug traffickers go up to extraordinary rates. Again, 7,000 Canadians a year are dying of opioid deaths. We're seeing this problem raging in Winnipeg, Toronto, especially Vancouver, where the NDP member is from. This is a serious issue. And yet with Bill C-5, we're seeing a reduction or no mandatory minimum prison time for the people responsible for those deaths. What I'd like to focus on now for my question is regarding the issue of the gun smuggling. You've talked a little bit about it, but what frustrates me in particular is where your government is investing its resources. So we see the buyback program, which we know will not have, there will be no criminals providing their guns back to the federal government. That's not going to impact criminal gun behavior. And yet we know the buyback program will cost estimates say $1 billion to even $3 billion. I've seen estimates for. So that's going to cost the taxpayer $3 billion, maybe $3 billion. And we know the RCMP resources, which are already stretched far too thin, are going to have to be put towards thousands of hours towards this buyback program. So we do feel it is misplaced, the resources that your government is focusing on the buyback program. But I want to ask you, if you would invest, $1 to $3 billion at our borders, I think we would see a lot less illegal guns from the United States smuggled in by gangs, used in drug trafficking, and used to kill innocent Canadians. But I do want to ask you something specific about the smuggling across the border. We know that there are border communities that are being used to smuggle guns and dangerous drugs through. We know that there are some First Nations communities in Quebec, for example, that border the American and Quebec border. And I'd like to know what discussions you've had with those First Nations communities to provide them with resources to keep their people safe and to provide them with resources to stop the smuggling of any illegal substances or firearms that may be coming through the border through those areas of our country.
Thank you for the question, Ms. Dancho. And I will say that the RCMP and others are continuing to engage with First Nations and Indigenous peoples in a collaborative joint effort to ensure that we are cooperating and working together to interdict illegal guns trafficking as much as possible. We have set aside additional investments to...
Minister, I'm sorry to cut you off, but have you had any discussions with First Nations communities on our borders about assisting them with this?
Yes, and we will continue to have those discussions to partner with them. But I also just want to address a couple of other points that you made about our government's priorities, because I do think that they are important. First, with regards to the mandatory buyback, that is an extension of our banning assault rifles. I know, Ms. Dancho, the Conservative Party objected to that policy.
Minister, I'm sorry to cut you off. My question was specifically about what you're doing to speak to border communities, but now that you've answered that, I'm going to cede the rest of my time to my colleague, Mr. Lloyd.
Thank you, Minister. Something, a message from my constituents, something that you said in your opening remark. You said there's one common denominator for all these crimes, and that's a firearm. Well, you're missing the obvious thing, Minister, that the other obvious common denominator is the criminal themselves, and it's time to focus on the criminals in this matter. You also claimed in your statement you want to increase penalties on gun smugglers, and yet C5, your government's policies, is seeking to reduce mandatory minimum sentences. In fact, in the last Parliament, when our Conservative colleague Bob Soroya brought up Bill C-238 to increase penalties for the possession of smuggled firearms, you yourself and your party voted against that policy. Why do your actions not match your words, Minister?
In fact, as I have said, Bill C-5 ensures that we would be raising maximum penalties for serious gun crimes because we believe that that is the right thing to do. And I would just simply point out that in addition to taking that position on Bill C-5, we have put in place additional gun controls that does focus on illegal gun crime. That is how we are going to ensure that we create safer communities, Mr. Lloyd. I know that the Conservative Party sometimes takes a very different, fundamentally different view with regards to how to create safer communities. The Conservative Party opposed the imposition of an assault rifle ban, Mr. Lloyd. We disagree. We think that by banning assault rifles, that we're going to create safer communities. The Conservative Party objected to Bill C-71, which would ensure that there were stronger background checks and verification to ensure that we are not allowing criminals to get their hands on guns. We think those steps are smart, are prudent. They're informed by many experts, including frontline and executive members.
Mr. Chair, that's been over time by about 30 seconds.
Thank you, Minister. We'll now move to Mr. Zuberi, who will have 5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Merci, Mr. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Minister, for being here. As a Quebecer and Montrealer, this study is particularly important. I would like to talk about the source of these illegal arms for criminal ends. You mentioned some statistics in your opening remarks on the number of weapons that are seized at the national level. Can you tell us more about this? And how do you expect to solve this issue?
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much for this question. You understand why we invested in our police services to increase our activities aiming to fight gun violence. With regards to arrests and seizures that were done by the RCMP, we have reached record seizures of firearms. The RCMP can give you more details about the numbers. But the most important point here is that our government believes that we have to continue to send resources where they are needed. And this is on the front lines of enforcement for our police services. This is at the borders to stop the flow of illegal firearms over the border. And at the same time, we have to create initiatives that will prevent violence using firearms. And this is why our government has invested $250 million to create safe spaces for all of our communities all over Canada. So we're investing with in collaboration with police services, but we also need to study and implement tangible solutions to prevent gun violence.
Merci, thank you for that. I'm going to be splitting my time with a colleague of mine, Paul Chang. But I also very briefly want to ask you, what are your priorities that you hope to accomplish in this mandate? If you want to add anything before I do pass the time, the rest that remains to my colleague.
There are only 2 minutes left in this session, so let's talk fast.
Briefly, I would say to work with all of the members of this committee, all members in the House, and all Canadians to reduce gun violence. We believe we have more steps to take around gun controls. As we have seen, there is an increase in gun violence, particularly related to violence that is caused by handguns. We need to work closely with our provincial and territorial partners to find new solutions and ways to get handguns off of our streets. They're causing the loss of too many innocent lives. We also need to ensure that we are preventing gun violence from occurring in the first place. And quite often, I think we can put a lot of emphasis on law enforcement, on using the criminal law as a way to deter and to bring those who committed gun crimes to justice. But what we also need to be focused on is preventing future loss of life. And I think about our kids, I think about our communities, I think about women who have been disproportionately impacted by gun violence. And the agenda that our government has aims at working to reduce gun violence. And I want to do that work with all of you, and we have to be committed to doing that work.
Mr. Chang, you have unfortunately only 20 seconds to ask what they would say would be a short snapper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, while in office, the Conservatives had slashed the RCMP and CBSA's budget by over $900 million, and which resulted in the loss of 3,000 employees losing their jobs. What is our ministry doing, or your ministry doing, to accomplish building back these jobs and these RCMP and CBSAs?
Sorry, Minister, but that slot has run out of time. Maybe it would be possible for you to offer a written response to that question. I'm sorry. I'm just
happy to do it.
Okay, I'm just constrained by the rules. Then we move to a 2.5 minute segment. Madame Michaud, you have the floor for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will pick up where I left off earlier. The minister was telling us that 74 arms were seized by the RCMP. That's great, but not enough. The police in Montreal seized 700-some weapons. According to TVA Nouvelle, there are as many weapons going through borders every week as are seized in a year by Canadian police services. So the minister says that things are going well, but I think we need to do more to control firearms. If we rely on journalist reports about this topic, our efforts are insufficient and it's not working. So we need to boost our efforts. In Montreal, there is an American gun culture that's taking hold. People are thinking about getting weapons to protect themselves and to protect their families, and they are obtaining illegal firearms. There are kids that are dying in libraries or in the streets in broad daylight. The only thing that the government has done so far is to table C5 to eliminate minimal sentencing for people who have firearms. So we're looking for something more serious with regards to gun control and to end illegal trafficking of weapons. So does the minister have a tangible plan for the next few months? What will the government do to fight firearm trafficking?
Merci.
Thank you for this question. I fully share my colleague, Madame Michaud's sentiment. There's too many tragedies happening in the streets of Montreal, in Toronto, Vancouver, all over Canada. This is why we have a plan, an action plan that will reinforce the progress that we've already made with investments and in collaboration with the government of Quebec and our partners internationally, like in the United States. We have joint programs to ban and seize these weapons. We had made a lot of progress, but we have an obligation to do even more. I totally agree. At the same time, we have to study and act on a prevention program. I think we can work together with the Bloc to get your support on investments to prevent the next loss of innocent life. Thank you.
Now a 2.5 minute slot for Mr. McGregor. Mr. McGregor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, I agree with you. I think in your opening statement, you made a comment to the fact that, the criminal code, it is an important part of our justice system, but it is a reactive part of it in that it comes into effect after a crime has been committed. And I'm very interested in policy that seeks to prevent crimes from happening in the first place. We know that gangs in major urban centers across Canada often recruit their members from vulnerable communities. These can include communities that are made up of racialized Canadians, Black and Indigenous Canadians. But at the same time, many of these communities also have a very deep sense of distrust with our police services. This has been written about most recently with the report in the last Parliament about systemic racism in policing in Canada. So, if we are to try and prevent gang recruitment, if we're to try and regain the trust of these communities so that they can have that positive and healthy relationship with our police services, I'd like to know from you, Minister, what steps are you taking as Minister to direct Public Safety Canada to help police services across Canada so that we can start reestablishing a relationship of trust so that we can effectively combat gang recruitment and try and nip this problem in the bud rather than always treating the symptoms?
I think looking at some of the root causes of gun violence and violence writ large across the country does mean confronting systemic challenges within our institutions, including within the criminal justice system. We see far too much overrepresentation of Indigenous and racialized people in our jails, and that is a problem that we need to address. I know that in my discussions, not only with colleagues in government, but equally with the Commissioner, and I want to commend her leadership and the leadership of the RCMP to take the steps that are necessary to ensure that we transform and modernize the way that we do criminal justice. But it is very much a downstream aspect to our strategy. I think the root causes have to do with ensuring that we get access to affordable housing, access to healthcare, access to education, and creating safe spaces within our communities so that we are reducing guns and gangs violence. So I agree with that sentiment. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Minister. And thank you for your testimony and for appearing for the study.
We still have time left, Mr. Chair.
This concludes this portion of the meeting.
Mr. Chair, we still have time left.
I believe that the minister is obliged to leave the meeting now. Have I got that?
Well, we
right?
still had 2 minutes left.
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to stay for another 2 minutes. That's totally fine.
Okay, well then, floor is back to the
It's
minister.
that time of year. We should all be in a giving mood.
Okay, well, take the 2 minutes, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The National Police Federation, which represents 20,000 frontline police officers, issued a policy paper on firearms. Their position states that the Liberal Order in Council banning various firearms and the gun buyback program are costly and don't address current and emerging threats to public safety. It is the position of nearly 20,000 frontline police officers that your policies do not address illegal firearms proliferation, gang crime, smuggling, and finally that your policies are diverting important personnel and resources from the immediate threat of criminals and illegal firearms. Minister, do you disagree with the assessment of 20,000 frontline police officers?
Here's what I would tell you, Mr. Lloyd. The past president of the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police called Bill C-71, which strengthened background checks for prospective buyers, essential. The Conservative Party opposed it, and you vowed to repeal it. The current president of the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police supported our prohibition of military-style assault rifles, saying that it ensures the safety of our members when they respond to calls for service.
Minister, that's not what 20,000 frontline police officers said. But I would say, Minister, under your watch, it is easier for an illegal handgun to cross the border than it is for a fully vaccinated Canadian coming home from vacation. Minister, my final question. Can you define, you use the term military-style assault weapon on a regular basis. There is no legal definition. Can you define to this committee what a military-style assault weapon is?
Mr. Lloyd, this type of weapon was designed with one purpose in mind, and that's to kill people. It has no place in our communities, which is why we banned it. The Conservative Party has vowed to repeal that ban.
What's the definition, Minister?
And we will always
what about it?
Canadians by taking the steps
okay,
that are necessary.
Thank you both very much. We're out of time. Minister, thank you very much for spending this hour with us. That concludes this portion of the meeting. Clerk, is it necessary to suspend? We're not adding any new witnesses. Can we just proceed, or do you want a few minutes to change the panel?
Mr. Chair, we do need a few minutes, just a few minutes.
Okay, we'll suspend this portion of the meeting. There'll be a few minutes to change the panel, and then we will resume. So everybody stretch for about 3 or 4 minutes. Thank you, Minister.
Mr. Chair. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Thank you, everybody. with us for this second hour by video conference from the Canada Border Services Agency, John Osowski, President, Scott Harris, Vice President, Intelligence and Enforcement Branch, the Department of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, Mr. Rob Stewart, Deputy Minister, and Talal Dukalabab, Assistant Deputy Minister, Crime Prevention Branch, and from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Brenda Lucky, Commissioner, Michael Diem, Deputy Commissioner, Federal Policing, Stephen White, Deputy Commissioner, Specialized Policing Services, Kelly Paquette, Director General, Mathieu Bertrand, Director, Federal Policing Criminal Operations. I will now open the floor for questions. This is a 6-minute round, beginning, I believe, with Mr. Van Popka. Floor is yours, sir.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for coming to this meeting. We called this meeting to investigate gun control, illegal arms trafficking, and gang-related violence in relation to recent shootings in Montreal. But sadly, Montreal is not unique in this. There's gun violence right across this country, also in Metro Vancouver, where my riding of Langley is. Earlier this year, there had been a whole rash of gangland-style shootings in Metro Vancouver, including in Langley, where a person was shot and killed right in broad daylight in front of the Langley Sportsplex, where my grandkids play hockey. So it was really quite shocking. In the process, I started to look into gang violence more closely, and I was surprised to learn that we do not have nationwide systems for tracking the source of guns and firearms used in violent crime. I know we hear that most of the guns used in crime are smuggled in from the United States, but apparently those sources are not, those statistics are not necessarily reliable, as there isn't a consistent requirement across the country that all police forces report that. I wonder if any of the witnesses could comment on that, maybe starting with the RCMP.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. What I can tell you is when we do actually trace the firearms, then we can know if they've been diverted, lost, or stolen, and we can usually get to the source. In a year, we would trace approximately 2,500 firearms, and when we do, of those 25 that we did trace, 58% of the firearms traced in Canada were domestically sourced. And in the tracing center, the known source, 73% were deemed to be sourced within Canada, and 27% were smuggled or possibly smuggled within the country from the U.S.
No, fair enough. So is there a consistency across the country in how these statistics are kept? I understand that Statistics Canada wants to start a study into this, but that, of course, is going to require consistent data keeping and sharing across all police forces. How consistent is it?
Well, when we do the proper tracing, the statistics are reliable, and but it's only for the guns that we do trace. I would ask maybe Deputy Commissioner White to expand on that.
Yep, thank you very much, Commissioner. Just to add on to that, there is a requirement for police services across the country to report into the Canadian Firearms Centre all the firearms that they do seize. So that is a requirement, and I can give in 2020, police services across the country seized over 30,000 firearms that were reported into the Canadian Firearms Program. And, you know, one of the key pieces in terms of what we do with this data, the Commissioner just mentioned, is tracing. Unfortunately, right now, we're just tracing a small amount of the overall firearms that are reported into the tracing center. We are hoping to increase that. And, you know, the ultimate goal of what we're trying to do with that is to create a much better comprehensive intelligence picture. Tactical intelligence is going to be critical to effectively implement any strategy that we're going to use against those who possess, use, and traffic in illegal firearms. And we need a national comprehensive picture, and that's why we are in the process of developing a brand new, modern national criminal intelligence service system that'll be used by all police services across the country for organized crime intelligence, gang intelligence, and included in there will be firearms intelligence.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm sure that the statistics that you do keep are accurate. I didn't mean to suggest otherwise, but I'm just concerned about how many guns that are used in crime are actually sourced, and do we understand where they come from? And how much of those are smuggled in from the U.S. You know, we're parliamentarians, and we look to implement laws and regulations that are going to keep Canadians safe, but that's going to require us, first of all, to have good scientific data that we can rely on.
I guess what I would reply to that question is that with our Canadian Intelligence Service Canada, we do a lot. Obviously, we work all together, and we use a national database, as Deputy Commissioner White spoke about. In that, we calculate, you know, the number of gangs. We calculate the crimes. We share the intelligence across organizations, and I would say that, you know, the ones that we do trace, obviously we've expanded our capabilities, but until we can trace every firearm, would we not have a full picture? But we do have, you know, a good picture so far with the statistics, as Deputy Commissioner White shared, and as I shared with the domestically sourced versus the sourced within or outside of Canada.
No, we understand from Toronto Police Services that the vast majority of firearms used in crimes in that city were sourced from the United States. And I suspect that Toronto Police Service probably does have the ability.
Sorry, Mr. Van Popka, time is up. We'll have to wait for subsequent rounds. Now I would like to call on Mr. Noor Mohammed. You have 6 minutes, sir, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here with us today. You know, throughout the day, we've heard this sort of rhetoric, U.S. style, you know, NRA argument that you know, guns don't kill people, and that, you know, really the problem is not the guns, and it's really the border. And so I'm wondering if Commissioner Lucki and Mr. Osowski, if you could share with us a couple of things really around number one, you know, how should we be thinking about the whole question of why really the average Canadian would need a handgun and or a firearm in their home in Metro Vancouver or in Montreal? Perhaps you could give us some of your thoughts on that. And perhaps you could share a little bit more, Commissioner, like you talked about domestically diverted arms. Perhaps you could take a minute and share with us your views on what's happening there. And perhaps, Mr. Osowski, you could also weigh in on the issue of domestically diverted weapons so that we might have a better perspective on this.
Okay, thank you for that question. Well, there's several reasons why people purchase firearms. Much is for sport as well as for target shooting. It's not all directed at violence. There are a lot of responsible gun owners out there who take the guns for such things as sport and target shooting competitions. And so that's why the firearms program is so very important. And with our firearms program, we continue to work with public safety and CBSA and other policing partners to combat that illegal firearms activity. And like I mentioned before, part of our goal is to enhance that capacity to trace firearms, produce that actionable intelligence that we need when we are using that actionable intelligence so that we can look at the trafficking of firearms and targeting the firearms straw purchase activities as well. And as organizations, we need to enhance that intelligence so that we can work with an organization like CBSA and other police of jurisdiction to target firearms smuggling into Canada. and I'll pass it over to John to add to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as the Commissioner alluded, so we're responsible for obviously the smuggling aspect at the port of entry. So we look at it as a continuum in terms of before the border, at the border, or after border. Before the border, obviously, if we get intel about an arrival of something, we can stop that conveyance from crossing the border. At the border, obviously, is where we would see most of our seizures. I think you have data on that in terms of the seizure rate and the investments that have been made that we've had to sort of up our game. I think the real focus now for us is looking at the criminal networks and the trafficking routes and really trying to prevent those illicit firearms from crossing the border in the first place and disrupting these criminal routes. And that's where the cross-border task force that we are leading with, supported by the RCMP, is going to be critical in bringing together local police of jurisdiction, their insights, as well as partners on the United States. And we're working on an MOU to share information directly with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms to really develop that intelligence picture. Yes, we have investments in dogs and technologies that have proven to be extremely useful, but really what we want to do is swim upstream and disrupt those networks so they don't get across the border in the first place. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm going to share the rest of my time with Mr. McKinnon, who I believe also has a number of questions he'd like to ask.
Thank you, Mr. Nur Mohammed, and thank you all for being here today. I know that gun violence, as Mr. Van Popte mentioned, is a problem in British Columbia as well. A number of us on this committee are from British Columbia, Lower Mainland in particular. So I'm interested in what can be done. So Commissioner Lucky, you said that 73% of firearms are sourced domestically within Canada. Are those, is that 73%, are those illegal diversions, or what percentage of that would be people who have like stolen guns or straw purchased guns and so forth? And how many that are legitimately owned by the people who are using them?
Thanks for that question. I'm going to direct it to our Director of the Firearms Program, who has many of those statistics, Ms. Kelly Paquette.
Ms. Paquette, I believe you're mute. Yeah.
Sorry about that. So the tracing of the firearms actually happens in two major centers. So there's one in Ontario and there's one, the National Center, which is managed through the Canadian Firearms Program. So in the national one, we had approximately 2,000 traces this year, and 73% were deemed to be imported legally or manufactured in Canada. It's a very, very small percentage. But what we do is we actually trace back to the multiple sources of that, or the owners of those firearms. So it's just not the last.
Thank you. Thank you. Time is up for that segment. I would now like to invite Madame Michaud, who will have 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
C'est vrai? 2.5?
No, 6 minutes. 6 minutes in this round. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
6 minutes.
6 minutes. Okay, let's do it. Hello, Commissioner Lucky. It's a pleasure to see you again. I have a question for you. I think we're here to find solutions, of course, but first, we need to identify and understand the problem. According to you, why are there so many weapons entering Canada through the U.S. border? Do you feel like you have adequate resources to intercept these weapons, both at the border in collaboration with other agencies, but also once they're in the hands of criminals, for example?
Thank you for that question. Merci beaucoup. The RCMP's federal policing program uses all the tools and the resources it has at its disposal to secure the border between the ports of entry and in line with its mandate. We're not designed to actually provide a patrol function along the border in its entirety, so we have to deploy our limited resources in line with the threat environment. And so the flexible approach, though, actually allows us to face a wide range of current and emerging public safety priorities, including things like the smuggling of guns, illicit drugs, organized crime. And so we'd welcome, obviously, investments in additional investigative capacity and technology especially, which would further strengthen our capabilities to counter these threats.
Merci. Je vais...
Thank you. I will now ask a question to Mr. Ozowski. I have a quote here that was published in the 24-hour newspapers. So it's someone from Borders and Immigration who would like to widen the mandate of border agents, and this could be a solution to help with weapons control at the borders. He says that it's a shame that agents cannot patrol with the RCMP between border entry points, that they could support the RCMP, for example, with the canine units, with intelligence officers, etc. All of these areas of expertise are present but could be better utilized. So I would like to hear what you have to say about this. Is this possible to widen the mandate of border agents, and if we should ask the government to do so?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So the issue of illicit guns at the border is a shared responsibility with the RCMP. And so while we have the mandate at ports of entry for the enforcement and RCMP has the mandate in between ports of entry, our teams really do work hand in hand. And I would just emphasize your point about sharing the intelligence and understanding how these networks work. And that's where I really believe we're going to get the most benefit and the results from our collective efforts. So we got investments in budget 2021 for new analysts and investigative intelligence officers, and we're going to be using those officers to work with the RCMP to better disrupt the flow across the border. Thank you.
Merci. Je vais me retourner vers Madame Le.
Thank you. Now, my next question is also for Madame Lucky. Earlier, I talked about the Akwesasne community that overlaps with many jurisdictions, and this is really a great place for arms flows. They're members of the community who are terrorized by criminal groups and are afraid of reprisals if they speak and intervene. I would like to know if the RCMP is speaking with the Mohawk Police Service in Akwesasne, and how much margin of maneuver do they have to intervene if they're aware of the situation. I imagine that yes, because there have been seizures in the vicinity, but I was wondering if they have the ability to act in this situation.
That's a great question, and I would refer to what President Ozowski said in that we need to, first of all, gather the intelligence together, and that's where we would rely on the police of jurisdiction, whether it be Akwesasne Police or Toronto or any other police agency. We take that. Then the second thing that we have to continue to be good at is integration. So integrating with those police of jurisdiction and forming those partnerships. So when they do have that information, we'd like to work together with them to tackle the issue with their intelligence and our support. We can work together to, combat the smuggling.
You talk about sharing information. Is this happening between border services and RCMP? I imagine yes, but what about other police services that are present in the area? For example, the Bloc proposed creating a joint squad with the NYPD, the OPP, the SQ, the RCMP in collaboration with CBSA, and this could go beyond sharing information. Could they have teams that are on the ground and could better control the flow of illegal weapons?
Commissioner, we have 30 seconds in the slot, so make it a short answer, please.
Okay, what I will say is that we have, with the government of Quebec, Quebec's announcement of Operation Centaur, for example, which is aimed at deploying specialized investigative teams to disrupt those illegal firearms trafficking with the participation of a number of police forces. We are participating with the Quebec task force on that to gather the information.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Now I will ask Mr. McGregor. He has 6 minutes in this slot. The floor is yours, Mr. McGregor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I wanted to clarify with the RCMP just the statistics. So I think it had been mentioned 73% of the tracing was sourced legally and domestically, and then 27% were possibly smuggled. Did I have those correct? Or can you just correct me if I am wrong?
I believe that was what I had said, yes.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner, of the 27% that were possibly smuggled, I guess I'm curious as to what our police agencies are learning when they trace these weapons. Like at what point of origin can we trace the weapons to, and are we learning lessons about how criminal elements are getting their hands on these firearms? I mean, are they generally being stolen from manufacturers, from gun shops? Are a lot coming from private firearms owners themselves? So I just wanted to know, like, what kind of a picture is being painted from your tracing efforts? What kind of lessons are being learned, and then how are those being applied, maybe in conjunction with our American allies?
Thank you for that question. The firearms tracing obviously is that key tool in determining the sources of and the diversion routes for the illegal firearms, and the link to the criminal use of firearms to specific vendors and to identify the tracking routes and patterns. But it isn't a mandatory program, and I will pass this over to my colleague, Deputy Commissioner White, who is more of an expert than I am in this area.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks you, Commissioner. I would add in, tracing a firearm, it's complex and involves tracking from, the point of manufacture through importation and delivery to distributors, to retailers, out to licensed, restricted, and prohibited firearms dealers. And, ultimately, we're hoping to trace it to an owner, especially here in Canada, if it is a restricted or prohibited weapon that's registered. And in terms of being able to identify, the final person who's in possession of that time of a crime, we're hoping by going through all these all the way back, we can identify everybody who's had a hand on that firearm. It's a complex process. Can be a long process, but as the Commissioner said, it's a key tool in determining the sources of and diversion routes for illegal firearms. As was mentioned, one of the challenges for us right now is we're only tracing a small amount. Last year, we had requests for tracing just over 2,000 firearms, and we were successful in tracing 1,472 of them. So based on the number of firearms that are seized nationally, we still have a long ways to go in terms of enhancing our tracing capabilities.
Right. Thank you for that. My next question, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Stewart, the Deputy Minister for the Department of Public Safety. Deputy Minister, when Minister Mendicino was before our committee in the first hour, he did make mention in his opening statements about the federal funding that had gone into place for anti-gang strategies and so on. And when I did ask him about, the sometimes troubled relationship that some vulnerable communities, including racialized Black and Indigenous communities, have with police, I would just like to know from your department's perspective, what kind of metrics are you using to measure the success? I mean, obviously a drop in the numbers, but do you have any sense of what the interim reporting is like for those downstream policing services? Like, are the federal dollars that have been spent so far having a success in the interim period?
Thank you. We are in the process of preparing a midterm report on our first $250 million program countering gun and gang violence. So those statistics are being assembled as we speak, and that will be critical to ensuring support and approval for the extension of that program, which was originally funded for $250 million and has also got $100 million available ongoing after 2024. So we can come back to you with details on that, but we do have, as is required by the Treasury Board, a performance measurement framework attached to those programs when they are established, which will look at incidents of crime and various other measures of that type. I'm not able to tell you the specific performance indicators here, but I can certainly get that information for you.
Okay, that'd be appreciated. Thank you for that. And finally, Mr. Chair, in the minute that I have, just turning to this CBSA, you know, we do enjoy the longest undefended border in the world with our United States neighbors. Many parts of that border are uninhabited and wilderness. Are we noticing any patterns in terms of smuggling activity with firearms where criminal elements may be trying to make use of areas where there is not so much surveillance in play? And what steps is the Canadian government taking to address those possible gaps in our surveillance?
Thank you for the question. As I mentioned in my previous response, the RCMP is responsible for patrolling the border in between ports of entry, but we do work with them in terms of anything that they might see and working on the intelligence and understanding those routes and patterns and whatever organized crime activities might be part of that. So Brenda might be in a better position to answer.
Yeah, just quickly, if the RCMP can mention that.
I can add that there is a range of vulnerabilities, including the marine environment.
Sorry, Commissioner, we're out of time for this segment, and I'm constrained. I'd love to hear you talk all day, but I can't. Okay, so then we will move to the second round. And in the first slot, Mr. Van Popta, the floor is yours, sir.
I think it's Raquel.
I believe Ms. Dancho is going first.
It's up to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few questions for the RCMP and the CBSA. First of all, thank you all for being here today, and thank you for your hard work and dedication to keeping Canadians safe. To the RCMP, what we're hearing from smaller detachments across the country is that you're very strapped for resources, particularly as violent crime and gang activity is spreading from our urban centers, our large urban centers, to smaller communities outside of our major cities. And this is of grave concern to me, as I'm sure it is all Canadians. We also see issues with rising opioid deaths. We know that hard drug trafficking is increasing as well. And it seems that there's less and less police resources and police individuals to tackle these issues. So I'm wondering if you can just comment in a broader sense of if the Liberal government or a federal government were to provide your department an additional $1 billion to combat gang violence and illegally smuggled firearms and illegally possessed firearms, how would that help, and how would you apply that $1 billion?
Thank you. Like I said earlier, we can always use with more resources. The border is a huge border. We are working towards advancing our technology. In that, we're doing a study to identify the gaps, for example, across the borders, so we can see if there's some technological solutions that would close that gap. So there's that one part. We also, because gang activity is mostly in the bigger centers, of course, when we look at the Lower Mainland, we do invest in a lot of the gang activity through gang suppression teams, and they are successful when we concentrate our efforts. Obviously, we don't have the benefit of having that in all of our detachments, as they're more of a general duty environment, but we do spread those teams out. We have provincially funded teams through crime reduction and enforcement who try to deal with that 5% of the population that causes 90% of the grief, and we try to use those crime reduction teams that are provincially and federally funded on a contractual basis, and that's where they can deal with those problems directly. So we would be great to have more resources in those areas as well.
And I assume that you can hire many more police officers as well to keep our communities safe and to keep violent gun crime down with $1 billion.
Well, we can always do a lot with $1 billion, that's for
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Luckey. I'd also like to ask a similar question to the CBSA as well. We know that COVID protocols at the border are very important, but they are, from what we understand, putting a tremendous strain on our already limited border agents and budgets at the border. So could you comment what an additional $1 billion would do if it was targeted towards gun smuggling and drug trafficking?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Look, we've had significant investments over the past couple of years, and my immediate focus right now is on implementing those investments. And I really do believe, as I said earlier, that the work we're doing on the intelligence with our colleagues to the south, whether it's Customs Border Protection, alcohol, tobacco, firearms and explosives, or local police jurisdiction, that's where I think the real benefit is going to lie. And we will continue to pursue those relationships and build that picture and do our best to stop these networks from their ability to smuggle.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. But can you, so you're saying that you wouldn't take another $1 billion to stop gun smuggling and drug trafficking?
I would, but it takes time to implement these things. And
Absolutely.
I think that we want to sort of make sure we put it in the right place.
Yeah, that's right. It does take time. It's unfortunate that a lot of this funding has only come recently in a 6-year mandate from the current government. But moving on, I would like to ask the RCMP and the CBSA, I think it may be more in the RCMP jurisdiction regarding outreach to border communities, particularly communities that straddle the border. We know that there are some Indigenous communities that straddle the border, and we're hearing that there may be some elements of criminal activity that's taking advantage of that and using those territories to smuggle hard drugs and guns, and I'm wondering what you have done or what more can be done to support these communities to keep them safe and to stop criminals from taking advantage of any issues we may see at the border where there's sort of porous activity and illegal activity streaming in. So if you can just enlighten the committee of some of the issues there and how we can better serve those communities on the border.
And enlightenment will be given 10 seconds. I'm sorry.
Well, it gives me the opportunity to say that we have joint forces operations with the Akwesasne and Kanesatake and Kanawaki police, and working with them and our international partners, of course, on the U.S. side. And that's the way we're going to tackle it together, as President Ozowski said.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
The next 5-minute slot to Mr. Chang. Mr. Chang, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, or good afternoon, everybody. My question is directed to Commissioner Luckey. As a former police officer, I would like to know your perspective. What are the most efficient way to tackle gun violence?
Sorry, I thought I was waiting for the end of that question, but that's a great question. First of all, I say good intelligence gathering. That is a good foundational piece, using technology to our advantage, making sure that we are working with all police agencies and partner agencies such as CBSA, making sure that we are able to share that information, we're able to take that information and take the intelligence and turn it into evidence, following the chain of where things are seized. For example, when we do seizures at the postal services, being able to follow those chains and action it into arrests and charges. Working with the United States, and we do have a great task force that's recently been formed that actually the CBSA co-chairs, and we do have what's called a best approach, where we are allowed to work with our American counterparts on the other side of the border. So, and again, liaising with the various police agencies, and we do that through the Canadian Intelligence Service Canada, where we are working towards upgrading, for example, our technology in our information sharing or intelligence gathering software because it's quite antiquated. But we do meet on a regular basis, and that sharing of information and translating it into enforcement would be the best way. Obviously, getting to the root issues. I would like to speak to, gang intervention and getting people out of the gang lifestyle. So working with other social agencies is important as well. Social services, education, health.
Can we cut off now? Okay. Thank you so much for those remarks, Commissioner. I'm glad that our agencies are working in collaboration with across the board to tackle these violence and to apprehend these criminals. I would like to cede the remaining of my time to MP Danoff. Mr. Chair?
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the officials that are here today. I'd like to quickly use the rest of the time that we have. I had distributed a notice of motion on Bill C-71, and I know that the Conservative Party had made some amendments, so I'm just going to read actually an amended motion into the record if I could.
Point of order.
I would move.
Point of order. Just respect.
Point of order.
Mr. Chair, if we're going to be moving into the, talking about the motion, maybe, like, if there's no intent to question the witnesses, maybe we shouldn't waste their time. Are they already gone? Or let them go?
Point of order.
Point of order. Mr. McKinnon?
Yes, Ms. Damoff has the floor and has been recognized. She is entitled to move a motion that is in order.
Ms. Damoff, would you proceed, please?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to move this motion that on June 21st, 2021, the Government of Canada tabled proposed regulations amending certain regulations made under the Firearms Act in both Houses of Parliament as required by Section 118 of the Firearms Act, which were referred to this committee on the same day for a period of up to 30 sitting days, and that the committee instruct the chair to report the firearms regulations referred by the Minister of Public Safety on Monday, June 21st, 2021, to the House unamended at the earliest opportunity. And I think all parties will agree on the importance of getting these regulations back. I have, in the spirit of the season, combined the Conservative portion of the amendment with a paragraph that I think is important to give context. So I hope we can just deal with this quickly, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, we can move into committee business at this point. So we have a motion on the floor. Do we have commentary?
Yeah, you're up.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just ask that we let the witnesses go because I know the head of the RCMP is a very busy person. And
yeah,
just to be courteous.
Fair enough. And we have reached the allotted time. So I think that's a reasonable suggestion. We know that we will be spending more time with these representatives when the committee resumes its work in the new year. So thank you very much for your time this morning, and we look forward to when we will resume. So I think that it's reasonable to allow the witnesses to leave now at their leisure. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holiday to all of you. We have a motion on the floor.
Madame Michaud, raise her hand, sir.
Madame Michaud.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do we have a written copy of the amended motion? I only have the first version. And I have another version that might be proposed by the Conservatives, so I want to make sure I understand what was removed or added.
Can I respond, Chair?
Ms. Damoff.
Madame Michaud, the third paragraph in my original motion that begins that on June 21st is how the motion begins. And then the wording that the Conservative Party proposed where it said, so the amended motion would read, the remainder of the motion I proposed is that sentence exactly as it was proposed by the Conservative Party, so that this committee instruct the chair. So it's one paragraph from the original motion to give some context, and then the wording would be that the committee instruct the chair to report the firearms regulations referred by the Minister of Public Safety on Monday, June 21st, 2021 to the House unamended at the earliest opportunity.
Is everybody clear about the motion that's before the committee?
J'ai une autre question, si je peux.
I have another question, if I may, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Pam, for clarifying. I do have a question with regards to the parts that says unamended. What does this mean specifically? I thought we could not amend a rule, so I wanted to know what that means within the context of the motion.
Ms. Demoff, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. I think the word may be redundant, but in essence, it's saying that the committee is taking those regulations as they were referred to us, important regulations around having a license to purchase a firearm and also businesses recording the firearms that they're selling, that those regulations, so the word unamended is probably redundant, but I don't think it hurts to have it in there.
Merci.
Okay, so members of the committee are clear. There has been notice given for this motion. Is there any other commentary?
Mr. Chair.
Is that
Ms. Dencho.
Ms. Dencho?
Thank you.
Yes, I can see you out of the corner of my screen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I did want to just extend my thanks to Ms. Damoff for neutralizing the language in this motion. We are happy to work together and to avoid personal attacks and charged language. We know that all members of this committee certainly value public safety, but we approach this issue on violence with firearms and how to solve it from very different perspectives. So I look forward to very robust debate with my colleagues on that. But I appreciate that we are setting a tone and working together to amend this to have more neutral language so that we can move forward with that tone and ensure our discussions remain policy-oriented and professional in that regard. And I will endeavor to uphold that, and my committee members can hold me to that as well. So I just want to say thank you to members of the committee for agreeing to amending this so that it's more neutral language.
Well, thank you. And also that spirit of collaboration and cooperation is very much appreciated by all of us. So, Clerk, we have a motion. Due notice was given for that motion. Do we now proceed to vote on the motion? Do I ask if there is unanimous consent?
Yes, Mr.
Is there
Chair.
Is there unanimous consent for this motion?
No, there's no. We'll proceed with recorded division.
Okay, we'll proceed with the recorded division. Go ahead, Clerk.
The question is on the motion moved by Ms. Damoff. Ms. Damoff?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Mr. Chang?
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Mr. Noor Mohammed?
Yes.
Mr. Zuberi?
Yes.
Stancho?
No.
Mr. Lloyd?
No.
Mr. Dog? Mr. Shipley?
No.
Mr. Van Popta?
No.
Madame Michaud?
En faveur.
4.
Mr. McGregor?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, yeas pour 7, nays contre 4.
Thank you very much. Is there other committee business? Clerk, is there a hand up?
Yes, Yes, Mr. McGregor, Mr. McKinnon, and Mr. Noor Mohammed.
Thanks, Chair. I just had a very quick question for you. I just wanted to have your confirmation that you're going to be retabling the report on systemic racism in policing tomorrow during routine proceedings.
Yes, that's my intention.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Yep. Mr. McKinnon?
Thank you, Chair. I just wasn't sure I heard the result of the vote. I assume it passed.
I believe it passed 7-4. Is that correct, Clerk?
Okay,
7 in favor, 4 opposed.
Yes, Mr.
Very
Chair.
well. I just
That's
wanted
correct.
to verify that. But I think that given that we've reached 1 o'clock, I'd like to note that I appreciate all the work done by committee members, and I move that we do now adjourn.
Hear, hear.
Well, if that is where we're headed, I think this is when I give my Merry Christmas and Happy New Year speech. I hope everybody has a restful break. We have a very full agenda starting in the new year. I'm looking forward to it. I think we have established some important relationships of trust. I intend to reach out to all members of the committee during this break period, believing that just getting to know each other better is the recipe for collegiality, and that's what I intend to do. So, with no further discussion, Clerk, are we ready to go?
Yes, yes, Mr. Chair.
Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, everybody. See you in a few weeks.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.